You know, the Hungarian Revolution of 1956 for many people is something just in a history book. But today we have a very special guest who actually lived through that. We'll be talking about that next. Hi, I'm Pastor Dave, and thanks for joining us once again on Standing Stones Community Church, our weekly podcast. I am so excited about today's guest. Well, I get excited every week with the guests that we have. You know, each week you get to see the church. The church is not a building. The church is people. And this week we have a story, a testimony that you're going to need to take time out and to listen to. Katie is here with me, and I mentioned the Hungarian Revolution of 1956. Some of you may say, I have no idea what that is, but this is where the story begins. So Katie, will you kind of take it from here and walk us through it? We usually begin by asking people to share their spiritual journey, but this story really begins your spiritual journey back in you were a child back then. So I'll just let you kind of walk us through how things started and what that revolution was like.
Well, the Russians were handed Eastern Europe after World War II by the Allies as a gift for helping them beat Hitler and the Nazis.
Right.
And I was only a child, so I really don't remember the way adults remember it, going through it.
Right. Now, the research I did, if I'm correct on the research I did, there was 12 university students who began the protest. They went in because Hungary was becoming a communist country because of the influence of Russia. Stalin started that, but he passed away 3 years earlier. And then the one he put in charge of Hungarian, which you lived in and you would know, took on that communism itself. And these 12 university students protested. And that began everything that really ended with the Russians coming in with tanks, correct? And you remember the tanks coming down the street. So I don't want to step on your toes or tell your story.
No, that's okay. That's okay. But a lot of this I found out after we escaped.
You were a child, sure.
I was only a child.
Right, correct.
You know, I was protected from the politics and the tyranny and the torture that went on. But now when I'm reading books that was written on it, everything comes back.
Right.
Even as a child.
Right.
Even as a child. But I'm finding out now that the Russians weren't the nicest people.
Correct.
I know when they came in at the end of World War II, I don't know about the other nations, but I know that in Hungary, just about all the women were molested, were raped by the soldiers, including my mother, that's another story. And
I'm assuming you weren't aware of that at the time, correct? Yes, that would have been devastating.
Yeah, you know, I was just before 9 years old is when we escaped.
Right.
But as a child, I don't remember. Just playing with the children, going to school, my grandmother taking me to Mass on Sunday mornings. And I was 10 months old when my mother had to go to work. And the only my grandparents could take care of me. And so we lived in Budapest, and so I stayed with my grandparents for the next almost 9 years.
And Budapest is where it all started. That's where the revolt started and so on and so forth.
It started in Pest, and we lived in Buda, across the Danube River.
Okay.
But I remember, going to school, just childhood fun.
Right.
Sure. I was innocent.
Sure.
I had no clue what was going on. I do remember at the time I didn't think it was hardships like not having meat, maybe once a week if my grandmother could find something. But I do remember her when she was able to get a chicken alive. I watched her cut the neck and prepare the chicken.
Right. So that really wasn't a hardship to you. That was just how life was. That was just.
That's all I knew.
Yeah, that's the way of life.
Yeah,
okay.
That's to me it wasn't hardship.
Correct.
It was
the way of life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just a typical childhood. And my dad was into sports, and there was a communist-run sports club that my dad belonged to. He was a Nordic skier, but in the winter, and he sailed on the Lake Balaton in the summertime. Took me with him. I learned to ski. I remember spending time aboard, the sailboat, sleeping under the hatch cover. It was just
Good memories.
good memories. Good memories. And but I do remember, and I wasn't sure about the date until I got my books back out on the Revolution, and I really started reading again after many years. On November 4th, okay, the Revolution broke out on November 23rd.
October 23rd.
October 23rd.
Right.
I'm sorry.
That's
October
okay.
23rd, when the students
Protested.
they protested, but it was tens of thousands of people marched.
Yes.
They marched.
Yes.
Tearing down the Soviet flags,
Yes.
the red stars. I mean, you could see they started shouting, Russians go home, and putting the same on, writing it on storefront windows. And when the students did approach the parliament, to present the points that they wanted met, including, Russia, get out, the secret police opened fire on them.
Wait, was there 19 things that they
Yeah.
Was it 19?
16.
16.
16
Okay.
points.
Okay.
16 points.
All right.
And it's in here. The 16 points are in here in English. And on one of the books, I read that about an hour's drive from Budapest was Csepel. They had a factory that made ammunition, guns and everything. Well, the Hungarians got hold of the ammunition. That started the revolution.
Can I see one of the books you have?
This
12?
one is just
The 12 days.
12 days.
Yeah. So this is what she's talking about, the Hungarian Revolution. Again, it started in October, and November 4th is when the Russians' tanks came in.
Came back in,
And you
yes.
remember seeing that. Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
So
That
if
I
you're-
do.
Yeah, if you're a reader, there's a good book to get for that. Thank you for bringing that in.
This was on Thrift Books. On Thrift Books. And this was a 10-year anniversary
me see.
when I was living in Los Angeles with my mother, the 10-year anniversary of the revolution.
Oh my
and
goodness.
they published that magazine, and
Yeah, you can see the fighting in the streets, and you were there. I mean, you were in these streets.
in Buda, no, that was in Pest.
Okay.
That was in Pest.
Okay.
That's where the main fighting was.
Gotcha.
In Buda, all I heard was the gunshots.
Right.
That's all I did.
So you heard the shots.
Yeah.
And then here's a tank in the street, and you were saying as a little girl you saw the Russian tanks come in. That's on November 4th they came in, that kind of squashed the... So anyhow, there's another... Thank you for that.
Yeah.
But I don't want to. I just want to kind of. It's just fascinating.
Yeah, it's.
You know how much I love history, and to have someone
I
who
do too.
lived through it is
Yeah,
just
I love
amazing.
history.
So-
People that, what's the saying? When you forget your history, you repeat it again.
Now, November 4th, when the tanks came in, you said that's when you were leaving. You and your mom were leaving the country, correct?
That was on the 23rd of November. On November 4th is when we heard noise outside.
Okay.
The rumbling, and our apartment building was a block north of the main boulevard where the Russians came in. And I've now read that it was like 2,500 tanks and 250,000 troops.
So Russia sent a whole. Wow. Okay.
We had about a week of freedom.
Okay.
About 1 week.
Okay.
And a lot of this goes into the politics of what was going, with Khrushchev, the Prime Minister of Hungary, and a lot of the leaders of the revolution, that they were all executed after the war.
Now I don't want to mispronounce the name, but my research. Who is this?
Mátyás Rákosi.
Yes. So he was the one that Stalin put in place and kept communism going in Hungary.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was your. Was he a president? What was he? What was his title?
Like Prime Minister or...
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And I was looking at the pictures that night of October 23rd, when the revolution started. A lot of these thousands of people went to the Hero Square, where there was a huge statue of Stalin.
Right.
Well, they tore it down.
Right.
They tore it down.
Yeah.
They tore it down. And well, all of that I missed because as a child you
Sure,
don't
sure.
you don't see it. But on November 4th, we heard rumbling, down the street, and my little girlfriend and I, we snuck out of the apartment building. It was a corner building, so we snuck around and looked around the corner of the building, and we watched the Russian tanks come down.
Do you remember what you're thinking? Do you remember the?
No, I don't.
Okay.
No, I don't. We were just
Were you
curious.
scared?
No, I don't remember being scared. We were
Okay.
just very, wow, what's going on? What's going on?
The innocence of a child.
Yeah, thank God.
Mm,
I'm grateful I was only a child.
right.
It just,
And then you and your mom left for safety. You went to Austria, correct?
yeah, on November 23rd, I guess my mother had said, it's enough.
So 3 weeks you were under these conditions. Gotcha.
She came to my grandmother, to my grandparents, and we just the clothes on our back, said, Katie, we're leaving. I said, okay. We got on the train, and standing room only because there's a lot of people escaping.
Right.
And her mother lived in a town right next to the Austrian border.
Okay.
And my grandmother's husband found a farmer to take us as close as he can to the border.
From Hungary to the Austrian border.
Yeah.
Okay. So he's a
And-
Hungarian farmer.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
Hungarian farmer.
Okay.
Which is a horse, one horse-drawn carriage, a wagon, which is a flatbed wooden wagon, and it was already dark, and we were going. There was farmland on both sides of us. It was fallow ground because by the end of November there was nothing growing.
Right.
Very, very cold, and we just I had on a sweatsuit with a winter coat, and that's it. We just put the clothes on our
I want
back.
to say you left with nothing.
Yeah, with nothing but
Wow.
the clothes on our back.
Wow.
And the farmer stopped and pointed into the direction to our left. It says, see those lights? That's Andau, Austria.
So how close were you about? I mean, again, you were a child, but
I
you have
don't
a guess.
remember. You could see lights off in the distance.
So within a half mile.
I don't know.
Okay.
I have no idea.
All right.
I have no idea. I would love to go back and retrace those steps. I think that would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, but
But okay, so that he drops you off, and now what?
but before he dropped us off, we were going in one direction, just a very, very narrow road. And a Russian vehicle,
Yeah.
I don't know what they're called, but the back of it had those canvas
Okay.
things that you could,
A transport vehicle.
I guess, that you could, roll down or pull up. And it was the canvas was pulled up, and as they drove by us, it was filled with mainly men, if I can remember, and I still remember the driver and the passenger, but the ones standing in the back holding the machine guns. So these were Hungarians that tried to escape, and they were captured. And I remember somebody saw us, and he must have known that we were going to. He called out to my mom and I in Hungarian, God go with you in safety.
So he wasn't Russian; he was Hungarian.
Well, yeah, they caught the Hungarians.
Okay. So the one who cried out to you though was Hungarian.
Oh yeah, oh
Gotcha.
yeah. And
God go with you.
God go with you in safety. Isten menjen veletek békén. And
Did the Russians see you?
it just this last so many years that it really sunk in that why didn't the Russians stop and take my mom and I back into town? It was like none of the Russians even glanced down at us. It's like they didn't even,
God just blinded their eyes.
yeah,
Wow.
in their eyes and their ears.
Wow.
people say that, well, maybe, the truck was already full. There was no room for a mother and a child. And I tell these people, don't take the glory away from God, because now I know He protected us.
Again, as you talk, more questions come up. But you were a child, so I understand that. But now being an adult,
I was almost
looking,
9.
yeah,
I was
now
almost
now
9.
being an adult, looking back, do you think if the truck was full of men and they didn't want to take you, would they have shot a woman and a child? Do you think would the Russians have done that?
From what I've heard, a lot of the children were taken back to Russia. Some of them, oh yeah, a lot of the women fighters were hung,
Oh
were
my
executed.
goodness.
A lot of the women were
So
executed.
God really just protected you.
Yeah.
Wow.
I have to believe it. In fact, I don't have to. I know it. I
Yeah.
believe it. It has to be. For some reason, the Lord wanted me
Right.
here.
Now, I'm fascinated with the story itself, being I love history, but your spiritual life, were you and your mom going to church back then? Did you even know God back then
As a Catholic.
as a Catholic?
Yeah, as a Catholic.
That's the primary religion there, is it?
Yeah, I saw my mom and my dad maybe once a week. On the weekends, they would, stop by, and my grandmother would make, Sunday dinner or whatever.
Okay.
But usually during the week, I didn't see them at all.
Who's
And
them?
My mom and my dad.
Okay,
My mom and my dad.
Okay.
And on some weekends, my mom would take me into where they lived, which was outside of the city, quite a ways. That's
Okay.
why there was nobody to take care of me, when I was 10 months old.
Okay.
But
Was it grandparents who took care of you then? Who took care of you?
my dad's mom and
Your
dad.
dad's parents, okay.
Yeah, they were caretakers of an apartment house.
Gotcha.
He fixed things around, and my grandmother would clean stuff. And in fact, I have to tell you, during the war, the apartment complex was owned by a Jewish couple, and my grandparents, were there to help take, caretakers, or whatever you want to call it. The apartment complex, a 3-story apartment complex. It had a big courtyard in the middle with gardens, and I guess the Jewish couple, and they had about a 2-year-old little boy, maybe younger, were taken by the Nazis to the Jewish ghetto in Pest, on the Pest side of the city. And somehow my grandmother was able to, under an excuse of I need workers, and Nazis were good about working, and it was a blessing to be worked. That's why a lot of those concentration camps had something written on there that, we're here to work. And my grandmother was able to rescue the mother and the little boy. I do have a picture. I have a photograph of
She
them.
rescued a Hungarian mother and little boy?
Yeah, Jewish.
Gotcha.
Yeah, Jewish Hungarian mother and little
Okay.
boy. The father, or the Arankanini's husband, was never found.
never
And yeah,
seen.
he never came back. He never came back. He had a friend, a Catholic man, that he was very close to, and when he saw that there were problems, he asked his friend Frank, if anything happens to me, can you make sure that Aranka and my little boy is okay? Well, he didn't know what was going to happen.
Right.
Well, anyway, my grandparents hid Arankanini and the little boy in the cellar of the apartment complex.
And saved their lives.
Yeah, for the rest of the war.
Wow.
And Frank ended up marrying her, and they had a little girl, just a couple of months older than me, and her and I were best friends. She escaped about 10 years later.
So, okay, you were in the farmer took you and your mom. The friend who you were looking around the corner and saw the tanks, whatever happened to her? Did you stay in contact with anybody from those days? Yeah.
Oh yeah, we wrote letters and sent pictures, and
Where is she at? The little girl that you
The little girl,
peeked around the corner with?
yeah, she escaped about 10 years later, and the efforts that her and her husband went through to escape it's another story. It just, wow. But they were able to escape, and she is now somewhere in Canada.
Canada.
Yeah, I know where, but
Well, yeah, we don't need to say anything, but
you know, because of the anti-Semitic,
yeah,
you know, I don't want to.
it's just
I want to
neat that,
protect
it's
her.
just neat that you shared that, and you still these years later can
Yeah,
still
we
be
still.
connected.
In fact, it's her birthday on the 23rd, so I will be calling her.
There you go.
Wish her a happy birthday.
So,
And I've been up there to see her. I've
well,
flown
off
up
camera, you
there.
can give me her first name. I will pray for her on the 23rd. Then
Okay.
we'll do that off camera. And yeah, so the farmer there, the soldiers, the Russian soldiers, see you and your mom, or God blinds them.
Yeah, they didn't.
Right.
They either ignored us, or I like to think that God blinded them.
Amen.
I'm
Amen.
gonna
We
give him
give
the
God the
glory.
credit. Yes.
I give him the glory.
So you're heading to Australia. You made it to Australia, I assume.
Yeah, we did. We started walking. My mother, because it was fallow farm, you know, land. It was very uneven ground, a lot of holes in it, and my mom stepped in a hole and sprained her ankle. So we couldn't go any further. There were haystacks. When I was a child, the haystack looked huge, but I'm sure it wasn't. I don't know, that big.
Right.
But we crawled underneath the haystack to keep warm.
Is that where you slept?
Well, I don't even remember if I slept or not. I don't remember. But in the morning, as the sun was coming up, an Austrian farmer in a tractor looking for refugees found Mom and I. Gave us a ride into Andau.
Wow. So a Hungarian farmer gets you to the border, an Australian farmer gets you across the border.
Well, we didn't know whether we were in Austria or in Hungary.
Okay.
We had no idea where we were. All we knew was we didn't make it to the lights that the Hungarian farmer directed us to.
Wow.
We just said, well, whatever. And but the Austrian farmer looking for refugees found us, gave us a ride into town, and all I remember of Andau is getting hot chocolate, because it was very cold. A lot of Hungarian refugees there, and in fact, I have a book called Bridge at Andau that was written by James Michener. He went there in person to interview the Hungarians escaping across the bridge. Well, we didn't make it across the bridge because we went in on the tractor.
Right.
But the Austrian government cleared out a World War II army camp in the Alps, in the Austrian Alps,
Okay.
a little town called Solbad Hall. And we were there in those barracks for, I don't even remember when. My dad at first didn't want to escape. He had a good life in Hungary. You know, being as a sports, playing sports, he had no problem.
So he let his wife and you go by yourselves?
He had no desire to come.
Wow.
There were personal reasons why.
Okay. Well, yeah.
Yeah, he didn't want to leave, and my mom said, I've had it. And so, but he decided to escape a couple of weeks later, found us through the Red Cross, and the next thing I know, we're in Vienna. He got a job there. One of the workers at where he was working had an extra bedroom where my mom, Dad, and I
So Dad
stayed.
did eventually come and follow.
Yeah.
Okay. As you're describing this, I'm getting a picture of the Sound of Music background, with the Alps and everything else, and. So on and so
That I
forth.
don't remember too much. I do now because we have gone back several times to that town, Solbad Hall. It was very, very close to Salzburg.
Right.
And I remember one night they took all the children from the refugee camp into town.
Who's they?
The Austrian,
Okay.
the Austrian government, or just the town people, I don't know. And they had little gifts for us,
So it's
little
friendly.
toys. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. All the children were there. We were getting hot chocolate and candy. That's where I had my first orange. Because we had apples in Hungary and fruit, but oranges were. It's a tropical.
So Hungary this time is communism, and Austria is what, as far as their
Free. It was
they're
free.
free.
It was free.
And you see no pun intended. You see the fruit of that. You see the difference of that. Did your mom leave because of the conditions, or was she afraid? What was the reason that your mom said, we're out of here, we're leaving? Do you remember?
The conditions.
Okay.
No freedom, no privacy. Seeing Russian soldiers everywhere with machine guns, and I guess with the revolution, it was going to be put down. She knew it was probably going to be a lot harder on the Hungarians than before.
Right.
And she said she just had it. Just had it. She meant to stay in Europe because it was close to Hungary. She didn't want to go very far from her family. But my dad, who was during World War II, he was in the Hungarian Air Force, and he was captured by the GIs, the American GIs. He spent, I think, about a year or so in southern France in an American prisoner of war camp, where he was treated wonderful. He loved the Americans, the GIs, and he held out. He wanted to come to America. He already had a job waiting for him in Canada by another Hungarian friend, and he said, "No, I'm holding out for America." So,
And eventually that's where your family came.
February 27th or 26th, the U.S. Embassy got hold of my dad, said, "Pack, you're leaving tomorrow for New York."
Yeah.
And so
Did you go through Ellis Island? Do you remember?
no, by then it was already closed.
Okay.
They set up a army camp in Camp Kilmer, New Jersey. That's where they took all the Hungarians to be processed.
Gotcha.
Until their sponsors,
Wow.
helped them settle wherever.
So you have communism in the country that you're growing up in. That's the only life that you know. You have university students who begin a protest. The community, the country get behind the university students. It becomes an uprising. Russia comes in with tanks to squash it, to make sure that that does not become an uprising. You and your mom, by way of farmers, escape to Austria, and eventually you make it to America. What a story. Just let you live through that.
It was, it's been, and I became complacent, even though my mother never let me forget communism. She always had these books, and she talked about it a lot, and I'm grateful for that.
Being an adult now, I want to be respectful of time here. I don't want to, we can go on all day with something like this, but being an adult now, looking back on what you experienced, what's in your heart? Is it just thankfulness for God? Is it because you know He protected you? Is it what do you feel inside?
I'm grateful that I was able to come to America, because I'm sure back then He already knew that one day I'm going to start seeking Him, because I had no idea.
Right.
And being as a child in a Catholic church, the Mass was in Latin. I had no idea who Jesus Christ was. I had absolutely no idea. Except the statue of Him, or hanging on a cross. He meant nothing. Nobody ever told me anything about Him.
Right.
And on Christmas, we worshiped a tree, not the birth of Jesus.
Right.
And that's why I have a problem putting a tree up now.
Right.
It's just, anyway.
Well, that's the next question. Last question I ask you. How's that? Do you have anything like that where you look back because of what you experienced still affects you today? You won't put a tree up because of how you grew up, but is there anything else that you experienced that you really couldn't put in words as a child, but as an adult you say, that's not for me?
Well, I would not experiencing the hardship, but reading about it now and seeing the politics that went behind it, it just overwhelmed me. And since, I would say the last 4.5 years, I've been in tears. I spent a lot of time in tears.
Right.
Because I can see it. I'm grateful that my mom passed away 10 years ago. September 30th is going to be 10 years that she did not see communism follow her here, because it's here.
Right. Well, thank you for sharing your story. I know this can be tough, but I really thank you for sharing your story. So
It wasn't that hard.
it's this conversation, though. But just sharing your story means a lot. So let me thank you for watching this podcast as well. I hope you understand Katie's story, and I hope you do some research and look at the Hungarian Revolution of 1956, and just
It's on YouTube.
Yeah, it's on YouTube. Everything's on YouTube these days. So anyhow, we would love to have you come and worship. You can meet Katie in person if you wish, but we are Standing Stones Community Church. We meet every Sunday at 10:30. We're on the north side of Phoenix. We're at 19th and Pinnacle Peak. We'd love to have you come and join us and worship with us. So between now and next week, we'll be back again next week with another podcast. But between now and then, I pray that everything you say and do is for the glory of God. God bless you.
Thank you for joining our Standing Stones podcast today. It is our hope that through this podcast, your faith is increased, your spirit is encouraged, and your knowledge of the Word of God is expanded. Don't forget to follow, like, and subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future content. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please share this podcast with your family and friends, and we look forward to you joining us this Sunday at Standing Stones Community Church. For more information about our church, please visit standingstonescc.org.